what's up, everyone, and welcome back to the End Zone Report. As always, I will be your host, Chris, and this is a show where we tackle the NFL. Well, we tackled Week 17, and it ended up on a banger. Sunday night, we had a huge throwdown between Chicago Bears and the San Francisco 49ers. Brock Purdy was on another level. He threw for 3 touchdowns and ran 2 on the ground on top of that. And Caleb Williams just looked pretty good too. The final score ended up being 42-38. It was a massive over on the over-under for the week. I think it was at like 51.5. It ended up being way over that, even at the half point at halftime. But the San Francisco 49ers ended up pulling out a win there on Sunday night, which was pretty awesome to see. Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey and even Jawan Jennings getting into the mix there without George Kittle and Mickey Pearsall coming in and out of there, still dealing with some injuries. So you had Tongas in there at tight end to cover for George Kittle, but it sounds like he should be back for the Seattle game, which will be another massive game for playoff implications. And then the other side, the Chicago Bears looked really good too. They got DJ Moore, even though he was questionable coming in here with the illness. He only had 1 catch, I think it was. So it was really Luther Burden III and Colston Loveland, the rookie tight end, along with DeAndre Swift running in for 2 touchdowns as well. But Caleb looks good too. The Bears are exciting to watch this year, and I'm interested to see what they do in the playoffs for sure. But we'll get into all those playoff implications with one of the storylines for today. Before we do that, though, we'll get into the injuries and some of the other storylines that happened during Week 17. Before we dive into those injuries, a couple of reminders. You can watch the show every week at youtube.com/the End Zone Report. You can also watch and listen to the audio version on Spotify now. So you can also watch the video version on Spotify if you prefer that platform. Also, check out the social media pages on Facebook, X, and Instagram. I post all the artwork from each and every episode on there, as well as any breaking news that happens during the NFL, just like Trayvon Giggs, getting picked up by the Green Bay Packers once the Dallas Cowboys waived him. So he will join fellow teammate Micah Parsons, who has that torn ACL. So it makes sense for the Packers to go out and help their defense as they head into the playoffs. Looks like they're pretty much locked in at number 7. So they're just kind of getting everybody healthy and prepping that team for the playoff run. I think Jordan Love is still up in the air if he will play against the Bears this week. I could see them sitting him, considering, like I said, they are pretty much locked into that 7th seed on the NFC side of the NFL picture. So it'll probably be Malik Willis once again at quarterback in Week 18 against Chicago. Chicago does have some playoff implications on the line, so they will be heavily motivated to win this game against Green Bay to try to keep their seeding at a certain spot for them as well. But we'll get on all to that later on in the episode. So let's head over to the injuries to see what is up with the NFL. We've got quite a list of injuries coming out of Week 17 heading into Week 18. Josh Allen, quarterback of the Buffalo Bills, went out of the game for a few moments with a foot. It does not seem too serious, and I think he is set to play against the Jets potentially to try to get a better seeding, but I wouldn't be surprised if they sit him with it being the Jets. But we'll monitor that foot injury for Josh Allen for sure, because if he ends up going down, that is bad news bears for the Buffalo Bills going into the playoffs. Also at quarterback, we've got Geno Smith of the Raiders. He suffered a high ankle sprain Week 17, so Kenny Pickett will get the start once again in Week 18. They're pretty much looking at the number 1 pick in the draft anyways, so they weren't going to start Geno Smith in Week 18, I think, regardless of an injury or not. But this kind of makes their choice a little easier with him suffering an unfortunate high ankle sprain this past week. At running back, Breece Hall suffered a knee injury, running back for the New York Jets. That'll be something to closely monitor. Now, the Jets, of course, are not in the playoffs. They're looking at pretty much a top 5, definitely top 10 pick this coming draft. But Breece Hall is projected to be leaving the New York Jets as he has become a free agent. So that knee injury will be something that to monitor as teams look to pick him up. And then we have Blake Corum, running back of the Los Angeles Rams, left the game pretty much early on Monday night with an ankle injury. So that's something to keep monitoring as well as the Rams head into the playoffs. He's been really involved lately, especially this down the stretch part of the season. So that's a huge blow to their running back room if he is unable to go come playoff time. But so we'll monitor that one for sure. Tight end, we have Harold Fannin Jr., the tight end sensation for the Cleveland Browns. He suffered he re-aggravated that groin injury that he was questionable going into there right after he scored a touchdown. So if you did end up starting him, you were pretty happy with his output because he re-aggravated it on that touchdown. So something to monitor there. Browns, of course, are not in the playoffs either, so they'll just probably rest him and get him healthy for next year. And then Travion Sanders of the Carolina Panthers. He's also tight end. He broke his ankle, so we'll monitor that as well. He was looking pretty involved in that Carolina offense this year, so that's a huge bummer for them as they look to hopefully lock down the NFC South this week against the Buccaneers. We'll keep you posted on that injury for sure. At wide receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr. Suffered a heel injury, so he was taken out pretty early on. So we'll monitor him. Carolina isn't in the playoffs, so they'll just probably sit him and rest him up for next year. Rashid Shaheed, wide receiver of the Seattle Seahawks, suffered a concussion. That'll be something to monitor as we go into playoffs. Seattle will be fighting the Niners for the number 1 seed in the NFC. So if they do end up securing that bye, that is good news for Rashid Shaheed to get healthy before they have to play their first game. But if they do not get that bye week, it could be kind of 50-50 shot that he ends up playing in that wild card round. Van Jefferson, wide receiver of the Tennessee Titans, suffered a forearm injury. Titans, of course, are not in the playoffs either, so they'll just probably rest him and get him healthy. And then on the defensive side, we got Sauce Gardner of the Indianapolis Colts, suffered a calf injury. He just can't seem to catch a break since coming over there. So he will probably miss this week since the Colts have been eliminated from playoff contention. And then Trent Williams left the game pretty early on Monday night with a hamstring injury for the San Francisco 49ers. That is a huge blow to that defense, especially with them going into Seattle to secure that number 1 seed and then heading into playoffs. So they're going to need him healthy sooner rather than later. So we'll monitor that one for sure. That's a huge time injury on their defense. A defense that has already been shredded with injuries throughout this year. In their offense too. You know, George Kittle, Brock Purdy, Bricky Pearsall, they've all been suffering injuries throughout the year. So we'll monitor the Niners, of course. So that pretty much rounds up all the injuries. It looks like Lamar Jackson will be playing against the Steelers this week. Of course, he has been missing a few games due to injury, but it looks like he is back and healthy. So he will help fight for that AFC North title against the Steelers on Sunday night. So that's major news for the Ravens offense. So that wraps up all the injuries. Let's head over to the weekly reaction with the Week 17 storylines. So I've got 5 more storylines for everybody as we exit Week 17. My Broncos have clinched the AFC West after a long stretch of the Chiefs taking that title. It is now brought home back to the Broncos. They are division champions. They will be fighting for that number 1 seed in the AFC this week. If they beat the Chargers, they will secure that number 1 seed in the AFC and get that bye. With the Chargers benching Justin Herbert to get him healthy for the playoffs, and they are now starting Trey Lance. It looks like they have left the gate pretty much wide open for the Broncos to secure that number 1 seed. So Broncos fans, we have got to be pretty happy with the turn of events here in securing that number 1 seed. It's going to be great if they can secure that. I would feel much better if they can get some home field advantage in the playoffs for sure. The next storyline, can the Lions get back to the playoffs without Ben Johnson? That is a big fat no, in my opinion. Ben Johnson has been incredible since coming on as the head coach for the Chicago Bears. He is a great offensive mind, a great asset to them. He has totally rebuilt that offensive line for Chicago. They've improved the wide receiver room with the draft with Luther Burton III, and at tight end with Colston Loveland. Caleb Williams has definitely taking an upgrade in his view of the field and just kind of matured a lot this past year in the offseason, of course. So Ben Johnson leaving Detroit has really left them in the dust. Detroit's got a lot of things to figure out. They are now missing the playoffs this year, which is crazy to think because the last 2-3 years have been extremely awesome, but it's looking like a lot of that success came at the hands of Ben Johnson. Dan Campbell, who is more of a defensive mind coach, just hasn't figured things out yet without Ben Johnson and without Aaron Glenn, who is now in the New York Jets, but he is kind of dealing with his own turmoil as that head coach. But Ben Johnson seems to be the winner out of this breakup from Detroit. He is just tearing it up in Chicago as the head coach. So right now, I'm very disappointed with how the Lions season has gone. I would have thought for sure they would make the playoffs this year, but the Packers said otherwise and took that spot from them. So hopefully they can figure things out on the offseason, get that defense healthy, get the center and the offensive line stronger to protect Jared Goff. You got to get Jahmyr Gibbs going. You got to get David Montgomery going. You need to keep St. Brown healthy, get Jameson Williams more involved, and they need to get Laporta healthy as well. You know, he's such a great asset to that offense. So just a lot of things to figure out in Detroit, and it sucks because they have such great talent on both sides of the ball. And I know the defense has suffered a lot of injuries this year, so that's got to be part of a huge reason why they haven't just been the great success that they have been in the last couple of years. But it also comes on the shoulders of Dan Campbell. So they have a lot to figure out in this offseason. I hope they do, because I would love to see the Lions back into the playoffs next year. Your next storyline, we have the battle for the AFC North coming on Sunday night. This is going to be an interesting game to watch now that it has been confirmed that Lamar will be playing in this game. We got Lamar Jackson going up against Aaron Rodgers for the division and the last spot in the AFC playoff picture. They will be sneaking in there at number 4, the winner of this game on Sunday night. So it's going to be a massive, massive game to watch. And of course, it's going to be on prime time. We don't have any Thursday or Monday night games. So this is all on Saturday and Sunday this week, which is very awesome. You know, I too have a full-time job that I do outside of the podcasting. So the fact that they've kept these games on the weekend is perfect for me. So I'm going to definitely watch this game. It's going to be a must-see TV to see who comes out of the AFC North in that last spot in the AFC. So I'll get to my pick on that game later on in the episode, but you could probably guess who I'm going to go with. The next storyline, we have Hurts throwing for 0 in the second half. That Bills and Eagles game was wild. Jalen Hurts completed 0 passes in the second half of that game, and they ended up winning that game. It was freaking nuts, the scoring and the momentum and just how that game unfolded throughout all 4 quarters. The Eagles ended up winning 13-12. The Bills made a fourth quarter comeback with scoring multiple times downfield. They selected to go for the 2-point conversion instead of going for the tie and going into overtime. They wanted to go for the win, so they went for the 2-point conversion. Josh Allen misses Shakir on a wide open pass. He just throws it way too low for him to grab in the end zone, and the Eagles end up coming out on top by 1 point. But Jalen Hurts' stat line is freaking nuts in this game. So he had 13 completions out of 27 throws, which all 13 completions came in the first half. I think in the second half, he had like 6 attempts passing and missed on all of them. He had 110 passing yards. He did throw 1 touchdown, and then he carried the ball 3 times for 5 yards. It was the only touchdown in the game to Goddard, which I believe was in the second quarter. So it would have been the very end of the second quarter. All their points came in the first half. So the Bills ended up scoring 12 points late in the fourth. That game is just freaking wild. I of course picked the Bills to win that game, and it's unfortunate they lost it because they basically shot them out of the AFC East title. So they have to settle for a worser pick. I think they're kind of locked in there at number 7. They might have a chance to move up to maybe 5 if the Texans lose and the Chargers lose, I think. So if it looks like the Chargers probably going to lose against the Denver Broncos, so they could potentially move up to 6. If the Texans end up losing, they could move up to 5th as well. So they will be motivated against the Jets this week to get a better draft or better playoff pick. But it's just really, really bizarre how that game unfolded between the Eagles, and it really does not make me confident about Jalen Hurts and the Eagles going into the playoffs. They're currently sitting at number 3, winning the division of the NFC East. So, but they could easily get wiped out in the wild card round. So they will be something to monitor as well. They do not look like the Eagles that had just won the Super Bowl last year. They have a lot of things to figure out on both sides of the ball for sure. And then the last storyline is, of course, the playoff picture coming out of Week 17. So the AFC side, we have the Broncos at number 1, sitting at 13-3. They have locked in their playoff spot. Now it all comes down to if they can clinch the number 1 seed. Like I said before, if they win against the Chargers this week, they will lock in at number 1 in the seeding here in the AFC side. So they will get that bye week and then home field advantage through the playoffs. At number 2, we've got the Patriots sitting there at 13-3. They have also clinched their division, and they will secure that spot there. The Jaguars sitting at 12-4. They have a chance to take the number 1 seed as well as the Patriots if Denver ends up losing, and they can win that. They can win their matchup as well. But it's crazy with the Jaguars because they could end up as like the number 1, the number 2, the number 3, the number 5, even the number 7. So there's a wide range of outcomes that could come with the Jaguars. So that's very interesting. Number 4, still up for grabs, but currently it is the Steelers at 9-7. They, of course, will battle the Ravens on Sunday night. We're sitting at 8-8, so the winner of that one will secure that number 4 spot. Number 5 is the Texans at 11-5, Chargers at 11-5, and then the Bills at 11-5 as well. On the NFC side, we've got the Seattle Seahawks at 13-3 at number 1. They will be playing for that number 1 seed on Saturday night against the Niners. The Bears are sitting at number 2 at 11-5. They secured that division title in the North. Number 3, like I said, the Eagles have clinched their division at 11-5. Then the Panthers will fight the Buccaneers on Saturday as well for the division and a spot in the playoffs. They are sitting there at number 4 at 8-8. The Buccaneers are currently a little bit outside of the playoff picture at 7-9. And number 5, this is where the Niners come in at 12-4. But if they can beat the Seattle Seahawks at in San Francisco, I believe it is, on Saturday night, they will win the division and clinch that number 1 seed in the NFC. Then the Rams sit at number 6 at 11-4 after their loss to the Falcons on Monday night. And then at 7 is the Packers at 9-6. They're pretty much locked in there at number 7. And I think the Rams are pretty much locked in there at number 6 as well. So that's what the NFC is looking at right now. Some scenarios to go over. I already went through all of those, but just a reminder, the Broncos winning against the Chargers will secure the number 1 seed and get the bye week on the AFC side. And then the Seattle Seahawks and the San Francisco 49ers will battle on Saturday for that number 1 seed on the NFC side and get that bye week and home field. One last thing in the weekly reaction before we jump into the fantasy corner for today, and that is the incredible and always interesting Chase-O-Meter. We are coming at the end of the Chase-O-Meter. Week 18 will be the last week, and then we will crown a winner on this bet between Megan and James. The bet, as a reminder, is $20 that Chase Brown, running back of the Cincinnati Bengals, can reach top 10 on the year. Well, it's looking pretty good for Megan. He is currently the RB8 on the year after week 17. He will go to fight the Cleveland Browns to try to secure his spot in the top 10 this week on Sunday. Fantasy points this week. Now, again, depending on your platform, this is the standard league that I run. I pull all these stats from. He got 29.1 points. He had 22 carries for 101 whopping rushing yards. Then he did have 3 catches for another 40 yards through the air. And then he did have 2 touchdowns, both on the ground this week instead of in the air, which was pretty surprising. I would have guessed that he would have gotten at least 1 receiving touchdown, but both of them ended up being on the ground. So that is your Chase-O-Meter. We will return one more time next week, coming out of Week 18, and we will see if he can secure a top 10 spot on the Chase-O-Meter. Let's head over to the Fantasy Corner and find out who our hero and villain of Week 17 is for your championship matchups. Since it was championship week for all the fantasy players out there in Week 17, I thought I'd do something a little bit different with the hero and villain of the week. We're going to do the heroes of the week and the villains of the week. So this will be the top performer in each position for fantasy. We're going to exclude kicker and defenses. We're going to stick with quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end, the big 4 in fantasy leagues. So let's start with the heroes of your championship week. At quarterback, we got Brock Purdy of the San Francisco 49ers. He got a whopping 46.9 fantasy points. He threw he had 3 touchdowns through the air, and then he ran into himself. He had a massive game against the Chicago Bears for your fantasy team. At running back, it's Derrick Henry, running back of the Baltimore Ravens. The Yeti himself probably won you your week. He had 4 touchdowns in that game for a 45.6 fantasy point output. So he pretty much secured that win for you pretty early on in championship week in your fantasy championships. At wide receiver, a shocking addition here for the hero of the week, and that is Luther Burden III of the Chicago Bears. He had a massive game against the Niners. He ended up with 27.8 fantasy points on the night. He looked incredible. You know, DJ Moore was questionable to come into that game with an illness. He did end up playing, but he only had 1 catch. Roma Dunze was ruled out of that game. So it was pretty much Luther Burden, the third, and then Colston Loveland, the rookie tight end as well, was pretty productive. But not as productive as our hero tight end of the week is Mr. Trey McBride of the Arizona Cardinals. He had a massive game and broke the all-time reception record for tight ends. He ended up with 23.6 fantasy points in your tight end spot for your championship week. So those are your heroes of the fantasy championship week. Switching over to the villains. These guys more than likely lost you your leagues if you started them. At quarterback, we've got Jared Goff of the Detroit Lions on Christmas Day with a measly 8.1 points against the Minnesota Vikings. The Lions just looked terrible on Christmas Day against the Minnesota Vikings. To join him is your villain of the week for running back, and that is Jahmyr Gibbs at 6.4 measly fantasy points. If you had those 2 guys in your team in championships, you probably lost your game early on, depending on how your roster was, but they did not help you at all. At wide receiver, Devontae Smith of the Philadelphia Eagles got a measly 4.5 fantasy points. If you started an Eagle, you were really disappointed, especially if you started Jalen Hurts. I think he ended up with like 12 points. That touchdown to Goddard definitely saved him. If he did not get a touchdown in that game, he would have definitely been the villain quarterback of the week. But since he got that touchdown to Dallas Goedert in the second quarter, that saved him from this lineup. But Devontae Smith did find himself on there. And then a tight end, very surprising, Kyle Pitts of the Atlanta Falcons, who had been tearing it up for your playoffs run in your fantasy teams. But he decided to take a seat in your championship game. He had 3.6 measly points on Monday night against the LA Rams. So those are your villains of your championship week in fantasy. One last thing to do before we get into the Week 18 predictions, and that is to crown the first ever end zone champion. Now, if you have been following the show or you even took part in this mock draft, we did a mock draft episode at the very beginning of the season with James and I on the show live. And we ended up turning this mock draft into a full-blown league where people were making moves and trying to win a championship. We will bring this league back since everyone had so much fun, including myself doing so. We will draft live on the show again next year in August, and we will see who becomes the next end zone champion. But for this year, the first ever end zone report fantasy league, Alpaca 300, who I've been playing fantasy with for the last few years in a bunch of leagues, he has come out on top against Megan in the championship week to be crowned the first ever end zone champion. So congrats to Alpaca 300 for getting himself a championship on the show. Well, that'll round up the Fantasy Corner for this week, and we will return to Fantasy Corner next year when the regular season of the 2026 returns. Let's look over to the Week 18 picks, as well as look back to the Week 17 pick tracker. It was not a fun week for picks for me. I did end up going 10-6, but the 6 losses really hurt. I did get the Detroit Lions wrong on Christmas Day against Minnesota. They ended up winning that in Minneapolis. On Saturday, I chose the Green Bay Packers to beat the Baltimore Ravens, but Tyler Huntley said otherwise, and so did Derrick Henry, dropping 4 touchdowns against Green Bay's defense. So I got that one wrong. So I was looking pretty miserable here going into Sunday, where I got some more wrong. The Steelers ended up losing to the Cleveland Browns in Cleveland. Cleveland won 13-6. The Steelers just looked horrible. They looked just defeated by the Cleveland Browns defense. It was a funny headline going into that game because Aaron Rodgers made it very clear that they were not going to let Myles Garrett break the sack record against him. And then if you saw the post-game interviews, Myles Garrett pointed out that they were so cautious of stopping him from getting a sack record that they didn't bother stopping anybody else, and they sacked Rodgers so many times in this game. But Myles Garrett is still looking at breaking that sack record. We'll see if he can do it against Baltimore. Let's see where we're looking at here at the sack record. I think he is still 1 sack away, maybe. Let's see here. I think he is still 1 away. That's what I'm reading here. Recorded 22 sacks in 16 games. Garrett is 1 sack away from breaking the single season record, which sits at 22.5 by Michael Strahan. So he is 1 sack away. We'll see if he can get that sack against Lamar on Sunday night. Also on Sunday, and this one hurt probably the most because I thought this was going to be a surefire win. The Buccaneers ended up losing to the Miami Dolphins 20-17 in Miami. Baker just looks horrible. He looks injured. I can't wait for them to finally report on the offseason that he has had successful surgery to help fix whatever it is he's dealing with because the Buccaneers just look horrendous down the stretch here. And that one was a real bummer for me, picking them and then losing against Miami. On Sunday, I ended up picking the Bills, like I said, but the Eagles ended up winning that game 13-12. And then on Monday night, the Falcons defeated the LA Rams 27-24. That one sucked too because I was pretty sure the Rams were going to come out hot and try to get this win to better their seeding in the playoff picture. But I guess with Devontae Adams being out, it's kind of taken a hit a little bit on their offense. And then losing Blake Corum as well early on in that game. So the Falcons ended up beating the Rams. So let's hope that I can improve my picks this week in Week 18. So let's get to the lineup for the week. So on Saturday, we have 2 games, both big division deciding games here. The first one being the Carolina Panthers going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Buccaneers are favored by 2.5 at home. The over-under is 44 points. I'm going to go with the Panthers on this one. I like what I'm seeing in Bryce Young. I know they're on the road, and they are underdogs in this game, but I like the Panthers in here. I want to see the Panthers make the playoffs. Bryce Young has definitely benefited from being benched, and he looks great. The offense is running swell with Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle at running back. They got the rookie Tet, who has been great. They did have some injuries on tight end, so hopefully those get healed up. And their defense has been playing pretty solid compared to the Bucs defense, which hasn't been great. So, and of course, like I said, Baker's been playing injured, along with other targets. Mike Evans has been battling injuries. Godwin has been battling injuries. But I'm going with the Panthers here to take the division and to take that last spot in the NFC playoff picture. Saturday night, we've got the big showdown between the Seattle Seahawks going to San Francisco to take on the 49ers. The Seattle is favored by 1.5. The over-under is 49.5. I'm taking the Niners here. I like Brock Purdy. I like Christian McCaffrey. George Kittle should be back. They have John Jennings as well. We'll see what happens with Trent Williams if they can get him back on defense. But I like this offense. I trust this offense more than Seattle. I know Seattle's got a really good defense this year. But I think Brock Purdy is just playing out of his mind right now. Shanahan is coming up with some insane plays on how to win these games. And this is going to be a fun game for sure. So I'm going to go with the San Francisco 49ers to take this. Heading into Sunday, we've got the New Orleans Saints taking on the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons are favored at 3.5. The over-under is 43.5. I'm taking the Saints here. I've been really surprised by how well Tyler Shuck is playing. Chris Olave has been a target monster this last year. And I know they've got some injuries they're dealing with at running back. But Audric Estime seems to be locking it down pretty well last week. So I'm going to go with the Saints here to beat the Falcons on the road. The Indianapolis Colts take on the Houston Texans. The Texans are favored by a whopping 10.5. The over-under is a measly 39.5. They will be starting Leonard at quarterback for the Colts, so Phillip Rivers is done. The Texans still have something to fight for here, so I'm taking the Texans to obliterate the Colts here at home. So taking the Texans. The Cleveland Browns take on the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati. Cincinnati is favored by 7.5. The over-under is 44.5. Cincinnati is going to play their starters. They're just going to try to come out of this year on a high note. Burrow is going to try to annihilate this Browns defense, but we will see if Myles Garrett can get that sack record against Joe Burrow. It could be with how that offensive line has been playing this year. I'm guessing that they're going to make sure Myles gets this sack record. So they're going to be blitzing the crap out of this offensive line. And they're going to make it very, very tough for Joe Burrow. But I think he can still end up winning this game. So I'm going to pick the Cincinnati Bengals. The Tennessee Titans take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars are favored by a whopping 12.5. The over-under is 47.5. All the starters for the Jags are going to start because they have a shot at that number 1 seed, and they're going to do their best to annihilate this Titans team to end the year out. So I am going to take the Jaguars here. That is a tough line to bet against, and I like how Trevor Lawrence has been playing. I like how that offense is playing. Liam Cohen has definitely turned this team around, and the defense is playing well too. So they're going to make it very, very tough for Cam Ward in this game. The Green Bay Packers head to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. The Vikings are favored by 6.5. The over-under is 36.5. Like I said, the Packers don't really have anything to play for here. They're pretty much locked in at that 7th seed. It sounds like J.J. McCarthy could be playing in this game once again. So I'm going to take Minnesota here to beat Green Bay. It's tough to pick a team that really has nothing to fight for anymore. So I'm going to take the Vikings to win this one at home to end on a high note of the season. The Dallas Cowboys take on the New York Jets, or excuse me, the Giants. That's the wrong New York team. The Dallas Cowboys are favored by 3.5 on the road. The over-under is a whopping 51.5 because that Cowboys defense is still horrendous. This was a tough one for me, but I'm going to go with the Dallas Cowboys here. I like the weapons here. I like the quarterback better. Javonte Williams is probably going to run for a bunch of yards. George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb are probably going to get a bunch of yards as well. But I do like Jackson Dart. I like Tyrone Chasey. We'll see if Theo Johnson plays in here. He was ruled out last week. Wan'Dale Robinson has been a great target for Jackson Dart on this current Giants team. So this could be a potential shootout just because the Cowboys defense is one of the worst defenses this year. But I think Dallas comes out with the win on their offensive side of the ball. Now, this New York team, the Jets, they are playing the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are favored by 7, and the over-under is 38. I'm taking the Bills here. The Jets have been a huge disappointment this year. The defense has been shredded through trades and injuries, and the offense has been a mess all year with the constant quarterback carousel. Breece Hall suffered that knee injury. We'll see if he even plays in this game because he is a free agent and he's going to be looking to get that bag of cash. So I'm taking the Bills here, and they're probably going to annihilate this Jets team. The Detroit Lions take on the Chicago Bears. Chicago is favored by 3 at home. The over-under is 50.5. This is another one I went back and forth on, but I am going to go with the Bears here. I think the Bears, they're going to be trying to secure a top seeding spot in the NFC. And with the way that the Lions have been playing on both sides of the ball, it's going to be tough. I know the Chicago, I think, is like the second worst as far as touchdowns against that defense through the air, I think. But I still think Chicago comes out here. This is going to be a huge game. You know, you got Ben Johnson versus Dan Campbell. It's going to be a fight day for sure. This is a 3:30 game, so we can call it a fight night because it's going to go into the night anyways. But yeah, this is a very, very interesting game. I'm going to be watching this game very closely to see how the Bears can finish off the season. Next up, we've got the Los Angeles Chargers taking on the Denver Broncos. Denver is favored by a whopping 12.5 because they are benching Justin Herbert. The over-under is a measly 37.5 because they're benching Justin Herbert. Even if I wasn't a Broncos fan, I would be picking the Broncos here because this is just, it's hard to choose Trey Lance over Bo Nix right now, especially against that Denver defense, which has been top 5 most of the year. So I'm taking the Broncos here, and they're going to annihilate these Chargers probably. Now that I say that, it's probably going to be a close game. Just like I thought they were going to annihilate the Chiefs on Christmas. It ended up being a close game with their third-string quarterback. But Trey Lance going against the Denver Broncos to close out the year, he must have really pissed off somebody because that is really messed up to throw Trey Lance against a top 5 defense that is as monstrous as the Denver Broncos. The Kansas City Chiefs take on the Las Vegas Raiders. Kansas City is favored by 5.5. The over-under 36.5 because this is going to be a gross game. It's a very gross game. I mean, the Raiders are pretty much have the number 1 pick, and this is going to be a disgusting game. I had a hard time picking this one, but I'm going with the Chiefs because the Raiders are pretty much been in tank mode the last couple weeks, and I think the Chiefs will just get a last win here to close out the season to make their record not as bad. So I'm going with the Chiefs to win this on the road, but it's going to be an ugly game. The Arizona Cardinals take on the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are favored by 7.5. The over-under is 46.5. I'm surprised it's that much. It's not higher because these Cardinals defense has been terrible this year. But Jacoby Brissett has been slinging the ball pretty well. We'll see if Marvin Harrison plays. But that Rams defense has been tough as well. So I'm going to take the Rams here to finish off the year on a high note with a win. They're not going to have Devontae Adams back, but they'll have Puka. They'll have Kyron. We'll see if Blake Corum plays. They might just rest Corum to save him for playoffs because I don't think they really can move a whole lot in the seeding with a win here. So just play Stafford, play Puka, play Kyron, get the win, and go out on the year at 12 and what was it? 12-5. Yeah, 12-5. So Miami Dolphins take on the New England Patriots. The Patriots are favored by a whopping 10.5. No surprise there. And the over-under is 45.5. Patriots can still try to get that number one seed if the Broncos end up losing. So they're going to be fighting to get this win against Miami, but I don't think they're going to have to fight very hard. Miami has just been a dumpster fire all year. They're probably going to start Hewers again, I would imagine. So the Patriots defense is going to eat this week. If you end up having to have your championship for fantasy in week 18, pick up the Patriots defense, start all your Patriots, because this is going to be a big fat whooping. If you do have championship weeks in week 18, change that, please. Just join the rest of the world and have your championship in week 17, because it's things like this where you are either starting players that have something to play for, or you have teams like the Chargers where if your quarterback was Justin Herbert, well, you can't play him because they're benching him because they really don't have anything to play for and they need him healthy. So please, if you have fantasy championships in week 18, talk to your commissioner. If you are a commissioner, just change it. Change it to week 17. It's a lot less stressful. But if you are playing in a week 18 fantasy championship, start all your Patriots, because this is going to be a big fat whooping, because they will be highly motivated to try to get that number one seed. The Washington Commanders take on the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles are favored by 7. The over-under is 41. I don't think the Eagles can really move, if I remember. Looking at the playoff picture, I mean, maybe they can get up to 2 if the Bears end up losing. But I'm taking the Eagles either way, because the Commanders have been just riddled with injuries. It's probably going to be Josh Johnson again. I can't see why they're going to play Marcus Mariota, because they are out of the playoffs. So this is going to be a pretty ugly game too. I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being the same game that was the Eagles and Bills last week. Pretty low scoring, but I'm going to take the Eagles here to win at home. And then Sunday night, we have the big AFC North battle between the Ravens and the Steelers. Lamar will be playing, so I am taking the Ravens. The Ravens are favored by 3.5. The over-under is 41. I'm taking the Ravens here. I would have taken the Ravens anyways, even if Lamar wasn't playing. Tyler Huntley is a competent back. They have Derrick Henry. They have Zay Flowers. The defense has been a lot better now, so I'm taking Baltimore here to beat the Steelers for the division and take that last spot in the AFC. So those are the picks for Week 18. Pretty much all the division games are going to be my matchups of the week, but if I had to pick one of them, it's going to be the Seattle Niner game on Saturday night. I'm very, very excited for that game. It's going to be an incredible throwdown on Saturday night for that NFC number one spot. So those are the picks. Let's hope I can improve from 10-6 last week. To end the show like we always do, I'm going to go over a bet, and I have a special theme bet this week once again. Okay, I did not hit on my bet once again last week. Surprise, surprise. I've not had the greatest luck with bets, but I did one. I think it was like $250 in fantasy championships this year. So I'm looking pretty good in the fantasy department. But as far as these bets, not been great. So we're going to try to end this on a high note for the regular season. I kept it division related. So these are players currently fighting for the division title in the last playoff spots. So I'm going with the Mike Evans receptions. His line is at 4.5. I'm going on the over. I think he's going to be targeted a lot, and he can easily get 5 catches in this game against Carolina. Aaron Rodgers. I'm going the over on his interceptions. I'm betting that he will get at least 1 interception against Baltimore. Baltimore's defense has been playing better down the stretch here, and with it being a huge division game, I think Rodgers is going to drop the ball in one of these plays and throw a pick. Bryce Young, I'm going quarterback again here. Passing touchdowns, his line's at 1.5. I'm going the over. I think against the Buccaneers defense, which hasn't been great this year, I think he can get at least 2 touchdowns through the air. So I'm going with that. And then to stack up with him, I'm going with Ted McMillan to get an anytime touchdown. I think he's going to get a touchdown this week against the Buccaneers. AJ Barner, tight end of the Seattle Seahawks. I'm going with the over on his receiving yards, 36.5. Seems really low for me. I think he can easily get, about 40 yards in this game. He seems to be a pretty popular weapon for Sam Darnold, especially in the red zone. So I'm going to go with the over on his yards. And then another quarterback here, Brock Purdy. I'm going with the over on his passing touchdowns. He as well is at 1.5. I think he can easily get at least 2 touchdowns through the air against Seattle, especially if he gets George Kittle back. But if he doesn't get Kittle back, Tongus has been great as a backup. Juwan Jennings has been the number 1 target at wide receiver. And then maybe Ricky Pearsall can stay healthy enough to get in the end zone. Or he can just toss a short one to Christian McCaffrey. So I'm going with Brock Purdy on the over on his passing touchdown. So that bet will get me, I think it was about $211 off a $5 bet. I know the odds of that is very slim of hitting, but why not? It's only $5. It is $211.40 if this all hits off of a $5 bet. So fingers crossed that I can end on a high note in Week 18. We will be doing some show me the money throughout the playoffs as well. Those won't be as big bets. Those will probably be like 3 or 4 leg bets since those games are pretty up in the air. But we'll still do some show me the money during the playoffs and even the Super Bowl. We'll do a bet on the Super Bowl as well. So that'll do it for this week's show as we wrap up Week 17 and look at Week 18 of the regular season. Then we'll dive into wild card round, division round, championship round, and then the Super Bowl as well to end off the year with the episodes. So check out all the episodes from the year. This is the first year of the podcast. It's been a lot of fun doing it every week, and here's to another year, and Happy New Year to everybody. 2026 has arrived. We close the book on 2025, and we look for a brand new year in 26. Also, check out my movie review podcast, Cinematic Reviews, every week. On Fridays, I'm doing Marvel Fridays as we go through the MCU in preparation for the new Avengers film. This year, I can say that now, Avengers is coming back this year, 2026. I also do a lot of different new releases and other movies as well. So check out that podcast if you are a big movie nut like I am. So with that, again, Happy New Year to you all. We will see you at the end of Week 18, and we'll look at what the playoffs are going to bring us this year. Later, everybody.